Mr. Harmon, would you state your occupation, please?
I'm a special detective employed by Senator Harrison's investigating committee.
And how long have you been so involved?
Just a little over 6 months.
What is the purpose of your investigation?
Legislative restrictions on the importation and sale of harmful drugs.
All right, Mr. Harmon, would you tell us, please, what you know of the connection between Colonel Ashby and Corby Kyles?
Kyles worked for Colonel Ashby. Colonel Ashby was a member of a ring distributing opium to tongs here and in San Francisco.
Order in this court.
Continue, Mr. Barclay.
Mr. Harmon, are you saying that Colonel Ashby, a man of spotless reputation, was involved in the narcotics traffic?
Now, he was more than just involved. Colonel Ashby was one of the prime movers.
And according to your information, how long was he involved in this trade?
Objection. You'll not make murder any less repugnant by maligning and slandering the good name of the victim, who's not here to defend himself.
Your Honor, I am merely trying to establish the victim's true occupation in order to show that there might be others with stronger motives to have committed this crime. Now, I deeply regret bringing out this sordid background. However, I am sworn to defend my client by all possible means.
Objection overruled. Please answer the question, Mr. Harmon.
How long was he so involved?
We have records showing that Colonel Ashby has been involved in the narcotics trade for over a period of 20 years.
Then it is credible to believe that he may have made an arrangement to meet somebody else, possibly a member of the Tong, in the alley that night.
Yes, sir, I would say so.
Now, Mr. Harmon, would you tell us, please, what you've been able to find out about the narcotics traffic and how it operates?
Yes, sir. Stuff is imported into this country, diluted, repackaged, and then distributed to various cities and communities. The original investment pays off at about 1,000% profit. The addict becomes a virtual slave to his supplier. Congress is presently working on legislation which will make the public sale of harmful drugs illegal.
You tell him, feller, you tell him. Order.
Thank you, sir. No further questions.
You wish to cross-examine Mr. Green?
Thank you, Your Honor. Not at this time.
That'll be all, Mr. Harmon, and thank you. You're dismissed. Are you ready to call your next witness, Mr. Barclay?
I am, Your Honor. I would like to recall Mr. Heath Barclay to the stand.
Court recalls Mr. Heath Barclay to the witness stand. Mr. Barclay, you're aware that having been sworn in before, you're still under oath to tell the truth?
Yes, sir.
Be seated.
Mr. Barclay, according to your testimony earlier in this trial, you stated that the quarrel you heard from the alley sounded like such a critical matter that you felt you should interfere.
That's correct.
You further stated that upon entering the alley, you saw two men fighting in the shadows, and that when you came close, one man ran away and the other slumped and fell from a knife wound in the abdomen. Is that correct?
That's right.
Can you tell me the location of the nearest street lamp to that alley?
Street lamp? No.
According to my measurements, it's 87 feet away. Over 30 feet from the entrance to that alley. Now, from that distance, that lamp couldn't shed enough light in that alley for a man to see his hand 1 foot in front of his face. And yet you state that you clearly saw Corby Kyles.
He was in the shadows, but I know it was him.
Even in the shadows?
That's what I said.
Now, Mr. Barclay, would you please tell us again everything that happened up to the time just before you entered the alley?
I was walking along and the headlight from the San Francisco Limited passed over me. I heard a man yell, and I ran into the alley to see what it was all about. Even though it was dark, I could see in the shadows clearly enough to know that it was Corby Kyles who ran. And Colonel Ashby who'd been stabbed.
You're sure?
I am.
Sure enough to put a noose around the defendant's neck?
Yes, I got no reason to lie.
I'm not suggesting you're lying, merely that you're mistaken when you state that you clearly saw Corby Kyles running away.
And I say you're dead wrong.
And I intend to prove you're mistaken by showing you the shadows that you saw into were purely imaginary.
They weren't imaginary.
Now, you're out of order, Mr. Barkley. Now, if you speak out again, I'll order you out of this courtroom. Continue.
Can you tell me what kind of a moon there was that night?
No, I don't recall what kind of moon there was.
Very likely. Your Honor, I hold here in my hand a newspaper, which I'll submit later in evidence, which clearly states that there was no moon that night. And if there was no moon, there was no light. And if there was no light, there were no shadows. So you would have had to recognize Corby Kyles in what virtually amounts to total darkness. Now, I submit to you that this is really what happened. From the sounds you heard in the alley, it was clear to you that somebody had stabbed Colonel Ashby and run away. Now, you chased after that man in the total darkness, and you stumbled on Corby Kyles. And putting his reputation together with what had happened in the alley, you assumed that it was Corby who had done the stabbing. Now, having assumed that much, your imagination took you one step further. It led you to believe that you saw more in that dark alley than it was humanly possible to see. Now, I'm going to ask you one more time. Are you absolutely sure it was Corby Kyles you saw and that it could not have been somebody else?
No. I guess I'm not sure after all.
That'll be all.
Any further questions, Mr. Green?
None, Your Honor.
I guess they're gonna let me go, right? Your chances look pretty good.
Your Honor, I would like to call one more witness at this time. Mr. Henry Bingham. Mr. Bingham, you're a train engineer in the Northern Division, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Now, where were you this month? On the night of the 15th at 11:30 p.m.
I was just heading number 9 out for San Francisco. I was a couple of minutes late.
Did you know Colonel Ashby?
I'd seen him up and down the line for years.
Now, Mr. Bingham, would you please tell the court in your own words exactly what you saw that night as your train left the station?
Yes, sir. I just cleared the last switch and was watching ahead. And straight into the light of my engine, I seen these two men fighting in the alley.
Well, now, how long did the light from your engine shine on the fight?
Couldn't say for certain, but it was long enough to see them both clear.
Well, go on, Mr. Bingham. Tell us, who did you see?
The one that was well-dressed I recognized right off as Colonel Ashby. The other one I recognized at the same time.
What was the other man wearing?
Farmhand dress is the best I can tell you.
Well, now, Mr. Bingham, I can readily understand how you might have recognized Colonel Ashby right off, but how can you be so sure of this other man?
I saw his face real clear, and I'd know his face from any other in a second.
Oh, well, now, why is that?
I'd seen him many times hanging around the station when I was changing trains. Never knew his name, but I'd never forget his face.
Mr. Bingham, why is it taking you so long to come back here to testify?
When I read about Heath Barkley catching him red-handed, why, I figured it was cut and dried, without my having to come down here to say my piece. Then I read about the trial going on, and I sent the telegram.
Could you make him shut up? Could you make him shut up?
Mr. Bingham, about the man you saw that night fighting with Colonel Ashby in the alley. Is he, here in the courtroom?
He is.
Would you, point him out, please?
I'll kill him. I swear to you, I want to kill him.
That's him. The man you call Corby Kyles.
He didn't do it. He didn't.
What do you mean? You couldn't have seen me? I mean, nobody could have seen me do it. No, nobody could have seen me do it, huh?
All right. I'd like to propose a little toast. Here's to Big Brother, who it seems is capable of making one of the biggest mistakes possible.
Audrey, do you know what mistake he's talking about?
No, I don't. Maybe you know, Nick.
Beats me. Mother, do you know what mistake Jared's talking about?
I haven't the faintest idea.
Well, Jared, how about dinner?
Dinner? Well, it's almost 10 o'clock. You mean you haven't eaten yet?
My family's not about to have dinner tonight without you.